Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're taking a look at Bitcoin. First and foremost, the price action going on right now. Second of all, how this affects the wider market. And then third, we've got three updates you must be aware of for BTC. If you enjoy the content today, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those post notifications and check out my Patreon via the link in the pinned comment. So on this chart here, I've mapped out two key areas. We have the support down here, which is going to be tested as a support resistance flip. If we do come down here, that will still be very bullish for Bitcoin. That will see us around a price of 52,000 US dollars. Or my favorite option here, and I think the one that's more likely to play out, is of course that moon mission all the way up to the 61k region up here. So that would take us roughly from here, 56,000, up to this target line in red, which is around 9% away only, which is very small for Bitcoin. That is literally 1 day's work. Or previous all-time high up here is around 15% away. So not too far at all, considering we put in a 14% gain at the start of this month. So these two green candles on the 1st and 2nd of October, I believe they were, put in 16% in total here. So those 2 days, if we have a similar run of form here, would put us above the previous all-time high. But of course, we have this lower line here at around 52k, which we could come back and test, as we've not really tested it so far. But we did have on the 10th, which was just yesterday, this kind of scam wick all the way down to around $51,000. More on that in just a second, but things are shaping up nicely and it looks like we want to go higher and will be pulled up to this red line like a magnet, in my opinion. So one of the most respected traders on crypto Twitter is Pentoshi. He's been talking about this for a few days now, and that is the Bitcoin dominance versus altcoins. And he's saying that right now is the best time to actually rotate back into BTC, or the most optimum time would have been last week, to be honest. However, this goes to show you that alts will bleed in their BTC pairings as Bitcoin gains some strength here. And this also feeds into the narratives we're going to go over in today's video. Bitcoin narratives are improving right now, and we're likely to see Bitcoin dominance increase. So he says that altcoin season ends at around a 40% dominance for Bitcoin. We're currently at around 45%. So he's saying that we could move all the way back up to this higher low previously, which sees Bitcoin dominance at around 52%. The likelihood of us going all the way up to say 70% I would say is fairly low due to the fact there's so many more altcoins in the market now than even at the start of 2021. But you need to be prepared for this situation. We could see a bleeding of the altcoins in their Bitcoin pairings. That is a very high likelihood and almost a guarantee at this point. But what we will see is that their USD pairs get dragged along with the Bitcoin price action moving higher in all likelihood. But what happens after this, once maybe we get up to this kind of region and Bitcoin is at a healthy new all-time high and the FOMO starts to really kick in, well, we'll just be waiting for a bit of a local top, maybe even the market cycle top, and then all that liquidity that Bitcoin soaks up will rotate back into the altcoins, and then we will have a major altcoin season and a huge rally, which many are predicting will come by the end of this year. I would not like to put a time frame on this personally. This could go on for many more months than people expect, but we will play this as it is presented to us. So in the short term, it looks like alts bleed versus BTC. They get dragged in USD valuation. Bitcoin continues to grow in strength, and then we get the rotation back into the altcoins. We see these market cycles play out time and time again as different narratives really capture people's imaginations. So more on that scam wick we saw just yesterday, and this is one of the reasons why leverage trading is so dangerous. Whales manipulate the markets, and I believe also the exchanges do this as well. So if you're trading on leverage, you can easily get wiped out by literally a scam wick like this, which is kind of disgusting to see, really. This person's put here, what kind of Neanderthal sells 40 million spot on Bitstamp? Well, it's someone who's clearly either trying to liquidate people or fill their bags down here. And we can see it on this 1 minute chart here. This is a 1 minute chart on Bitstamp. Initial pump, it seems, up here, followed by a dump. Immediately bought these stop losses at the 0.618 fib. So this looks like someone intentionally dumped this to go and scoop all of those stop losses up and scoop themselves some nice cheap Bitcoin in the low 50,000 region. There you go. That is the big scam all the way down to 51k, and then it just resumes back in the current trend that he was on. So not good to see in terms of people getting liquidated there, others getting stopped out, and generally having a pretty bad day when Bitcoin is looking as strong as ever. So let's look at those 3 key updates for BTC right now. We're starting with this one, possibly the most fundamentally strong narrative now, which is around the Taproot upgrade. And this article here from Team Luno is quite a good one and worthwhile reading. So the Bitcoin mining community has resoundingly voted for Taproot upgrade to the Bitcoin network, and it's now expected to be implemented around the end of 2021. The upgrade is primarily aimed at improving the privacy of multi-sig transactions and unlocking the potential for smart contracts to run on top of the Bitcoin network, planting its tanks firmly on Ethereum's lawn. So the upgrade will also make it cheaper to transact on the Lightning Network. So a few upgrades within this one upgrade here. You've got smart contracts coming to BTC, multi-sig improvements, and cheaper transactions on Lightning. So this is the first major upgrade to Bitcoin's architecture since 2017 with that SegWit upgrade. So it's been a long 4 years since any improvements have really been made, but this is now going to be a big one on the calendar. So what comes next? It says this: miners and nodes in the Bitcoin network have until November to update their software to the Bitcoin Core 0.21.1. So this is the newest version of Core that contains the latest improvements, and then Taproot will be activated when Bitcoin reaches a block height of 709,000 and change, which will be in November. So that is when this update is coming for Taproot. One of the main changes to the network is the replacement of Bitcoin's ECDSA algorithm with Schnorr signatures. So the issue with the previous algorithm is that it derives public keys from randomly generated private keys, and it makes it impossible to figure out a private key from a Bitcoin address to public. However, it has drawbacks, especially with multi-sig transactions where issues with efficiency and privacy continue to plague the network. For example, multi-sig transactions on the ECDSA algo are discernible from normal monosig transactions, so possibly drawing unwanted attention to these transactions. So they're saying that the multi-sig transactions would therefore not be hidden, and for those in the know, they would be able to actually figure out what multi-sig transactions are going on, and thus you could start to piece the data together. If you've got any doxed wallets, it would be possible to potentially find out who the multi-sig addresses are, the signers, and thus, of course, you could target these individuals. So of course, that is not good for a decentralized network. So it says this: bad people can currently tell when you're using multi-sig signatures. These, of course, are more secure than monosig transactions, but this information could help these bad actors to do bad things, but Taproot will stop this from happening. So with the Schnorr signatures, the multi-sig transactions and their corresponding keys can be combined into one key, making them indistinguishable from regular monosig transactions. Privacy aside, the smaller and faster transactions using the Schnorr signature will free up space and bandwidth on the Bitcoin network. So Bitcoin getting actually a major upgrade here, encompassing 3 areas: smart contracts, privacy, and efficiency on the network. The second major upgrade here, or more like a news narrative that Bitcoin's starting to capture here, is a narrative around its transactions and settlement layer. So we know Bitcoin as being the store of value, and that's been the main narrative behind this one, but it seemed to have now captured an additional narrative behind it. So when you see it being analyzed versus global payment networks such as Visa and MasterCard, this really does help perk up the interest of institutional investors as they see that this could be a real competitor to these old school networks. So Willy Woo puts this: money moving on Bitcoin's blockchain is back near all-time highs. It presently does 190,000 US dollars per second. Compare this to 130K per second by Visa and 55K per second for MasterCard. And this is without the inclusion of the Lightning Network. So this is an additional narrative that is now being tacked on and adds to the overall Bitcoin eats everything narrative. It's Gold 2.0. It's also coming for payment networks. And I think a big shout out has to go to Strike, Jack Mallers, for his work with Twitter and Jack Dorsey on integrating Lightning Network payments for Twitter users. So as we looked at, we're seeing Bitcoin dominance is probably going to go up. This will help feed into that. So this additional throughput on the Bitcoin network is definitely bullish for BTC. Now, the last narrative to really look at here is, of course, the ETF and the impending approval of one. Now, this looks highly unlikely to be a spot ETF, and it will be a futures ETF, but an ETF nonetheless. So again, from Willy Woo here, if a Bitcoin futures ETF is approved, in my opinion, it will be an expensive way to hold Bitcoin. The ETF effectively outsources the holding of Bitcoin to hedge funds through a chain of profit incentives. So the mechanics that will run behind this is that ETF longs the futures. Futures get more expensive relative to spot, but the hedge funds sell futures whilst buying spot to net the cash and carry profit. Hedge funds effectively hold spot BTC by proxy for the ETF, the fee being their cash and carry yield, around 10% annualized, and this confirmed by Raoul Pal as exactly right down here. So this ETF approval for futures has some nuances behind it that is important to also realize, but this overall will be super bullish for Bitcoin. Of course, not quite as bullish as a spot ETF, but nonetheless bullish. Now this from Nate Geraci here. This guy seems to be all over the futures. He's got a website and pretty much dedicated his life here to ETFs. So he's saying this: if you look down here, the following are added to the joint insured list, a Van Eck Bitcoin Strategy ETF for the 26th of October. So he asks, is it standard practice for ETF issuers to secure fidelity bond coverage for funds that may not be approved? Van Eck Bitcoin Strategy ETF is up for approval on October 25th and coverage being added on October 26th. This makes you think that these guys already know what is going to happen and that the writing is on the wall here. We're also seeing others on the inside here talking about how they are almost certain that an ETF is about to come. We're pretty bullish on approval here, said James Seifert, an ETF analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence. We just can't see Gensler and the SEC going out of their way to state positive comments about a 1940s act, a Bitcoin futures ETF at the end of September, and then denying all of them less than a month later. So it seems the writing is on the wall. Those are three major news narratives right now: the Taproot upgrade, the addition of global payment network settlement layer on top of store of value, plus the ETF that seems to be, writing on the wall at this stage. So with this trifecta firmly in play here, it does make you super bullish on Bitcoin and of course the overall crypto markets. So TechDev put up this really interesting fractal here. Where is 2021 Bitcoin likely headed? Ask 2017, he says. It's told you since June. And if you pull out this chart, look at that for a fractal. That is eerily close to 2017 here. And if we do chart a course similar to this blue pattern here, we're going north of 160, 180, 200K even by the end of December. So buckle up for the ride, folks. Now, I want to end with this absolutely hilarious story here. Thieves break into a Silicon Valley liquor store, not to steal the cash ATM, but to steal the Bitcoin ATM instead. Literally, Harry and Ma from Home Alone here, trying to rob a BTC ATM. Probably going to get it home and then wonder why there's nothing inside. This is the perfect thing to send to no coiners to see if they've done the work to understand what Bitcoin is. I've just retweeted this over on my Twitter at CryptoTubeYT. Go and send that to some of your mates. So a bit of humor to end off today's segment. So I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, let me know by liking the video, dropping me a comment down below, and also subscribing to the channel. It really does help me out. That's all for today, folks. Thank you and goodbye.